So seldom when we have a meditation and spiritual practice do we have the opportunity to turn it into action. Today's meditation is about Mother Earth, and you have an opportunity to turn it into action. I picked up this one because it was the tallest. I'm going to get another one, so please make sure when you leave that we honor what Dee has done for us, given the opportunity to bless Mother Earth with new life. Let us settle now into the spirit of meditation and prayer. Sit back and rest. Put your feet on the floor and feel the solid earth hold you securely in place. Rest your gentle breath easy and take a journey with me to this morning, every morning. Listen. The lone whistle of the cardinal cracks the night. Soon he is joined by a cacophony of birdsong, and together they raise the sun. Mother Earth turns slowly, and a soft, butter-like light skims the horizon. It is time to wake and welcome this day. Breathe deeply and smell the rain. Feel the chilled dampness on your skin. There is no other herald to this miracle. You are the only witness there is. You are the daughter of the mountain. You are the breath of the sea. In your hands rests the fate of this earth. Hold it tenderly, as you would a newborn child. Care for it, as you would a lover. Each breath feeds the tree. Each request is met with abundant renewal. What greater gift than this? You are the son of the mountain. You are the laughter of the rain. There is no other herald to this miracle. You are the only witness here. It is in your hands. Please join me now in silence. Well, I recently attended a conference of Spiritual Directors International. There were close to 600 spiritual directors from around the world gathered in St. Paul, Minnesota for 5 days of workshops, conversations, contemplation, and lots of laughter. There were individuals from all faith traditions, and we sat in collaborative dialogue about the spiritual state of the world. And amazingly, we agreed on much more than we disagreed. In the backdrop of the conference, there were 2 Native American women walking the length of Mississippi, 1,200 miles. They started on March 24th in Minnesota, so you can imagine how cold that was. They were doing this activity in an effort to raise awareness about pollution. They had a modest copper bucket, and it carried fresh, pure water from the headwaters of Itasca State Park, where the Mississippi bubbles out of the ground, a small spring. About 1.5 quarts of the clear water will finish its journey at the river's end in the Gulf of Mexico. Here's what they said. The water affects each of us. We are the water. That was Sharon Day, an Ojibwa tribe member and executive director of Indigenous Peoples Task Force. We want people to create a relationship with the water and with themselves. The theme of the conference was cultivating compassion on the river, and we were on the river, the Mississippi River in St. Paul. There was, however, 12 inches of snow also on the river. We had a special affection for the women walking. There was a collection of spiritual directors, chaplains, ministers, and other religious people, and we held a vision of the world in need of spiritual healing. We concurred that the world was suffering from disconnection from nature, from humankind, and, if you believed in this direction, from God. And the solution offered to heal the disconnection was to cultivate an attitude of compassion for the earth, for each other, and for ourselves. Okay, so my first response to that was a little bit skeptical. I thought cultivating compassion was just a little too simplistic. The concept to me seemed shallow and somewhat sappy. Compassion had become such a buzzword in the media and in social media, and consequently, I think it was hollowed out. For me, it just didn't have the guts and the action and authority that I thought was needed to change the world. I saw it as an idealistic Band-Aid that didn't get to the root of the problem. So I guess you could say that entering the conference, I was just a little bit jaded, or as my husband pointed out, I was just being a good Unitarian. The night before the conference, I decided that I was going to pursue one of my trusty resources, NPR. I found a TED Talk given by Krista Tippett. Krista Tippett is a journalist, and she's a host to an NPR program that is on Sunday mornings at 7 a.m. called On Being. You can also catch it online if you don't get up that early on Sunday. And it was a spacious conversation about a big question. What she did in this particular talk was reclaim the concept of compassion from the trite language and the images that surround it in the media. It was just what I needed. I found her perspective so helpful. Here's what she said. She says that the way compassion is treated by the media through idealistic, happy ending stories made it unrealistic and unattainable, and suspect by most of us. None of us can be the heroes of those stories, so we discount them as fairy tales. Oh, they're nice to see, nice to look at, but that's not my life. My life is more complicated than that. But she said that real compassion is a lived experience. And here's her definition. I love this. It is a lived experience of sympathetic consciousness of another's distress. Sympathetic consciousness, coupled with a deep desire to alleviate. She contends that this kind of a compassion can animate our guts, our heart, our life, and can save us when life is hard. She also said that it's most authentic when it is lived and can truly change the world. She said when it is tender and curious without assumption. It opens us to the acceptance of one another. When compassion leans toward understanding and kindness, it creates a totally different presence in any human interaction, one that heals and does not harm. In the same way, she said, compassion links us to the beauty in another person, not just to the part that needs fixing. Tippett contends that seeing the light in another human being allows us to treat them as whole and worthy, even if they're depleted in suffering. In this way, compassion brings us into the territory of the mystery, and perhaps allows us to see the face of the holy in the person standing right in front of us. And I contend that it works not just for the person in front of us, but for the environment and anything that we touch. And finally, she said, compassion isn't cerebral. It insists on being felt, and thus changes what is possible in the world. So I felt a little better and a little bit more compassionate about attending the conference, and I went in with an open heart, I think, and an open mind. The speaker, the plenary speaker, her name was Sister Joyce Rupp. She was well known as a writer, a spiritual midwife, and she runs retreats and speaks at conferences. She was a member of the Servites, which are the Servants of Mary, a religious community, and she volunteers in hospice. So she had all the right credentials, and she was real and she was engaging. There's so much that she shared about compassion at the conference, but she engaged my interest most when she presented it as an inner stance, a deep awareness of suffering in oneself and in others. She said that compassion must be based on the underlying attitude that we are all one. Sound familiar? And that compassion is not pity. It's not just an emotion. It involves the mind and the will, and it must lead to action that changes the situation right in front of us. I thought maybe she was really a Unitarian. Sister Rupp charged us with an engaging compassion and spiritual practice. She said that we should take it into our daily lives and approach all interaction with these three elements. Awareness of what is rising in me in this moment of interaction with another. An attitude that no matter what, we are one. An action that leans and tends toward kindness and understanding. Well, I thought, great, I can do that, no problem. And frankly, it was easy in the incubator of the conference. Everyone was primed and on their best behavior, and after all, we were ministers, chaplains. We could do this, right? Conference was over, and then I went to the airport. The true test of compassion. The people boarding the plane clearly didn't read the instructions about the size of the carry-on bag. They took all the room in the overhead compartments, shoving and pushing and jockeying for position. The person next to me had a lap-sitting infant about the size of a 4-year-old, and I began the flight having juice spilled on my lap. I turned toward the aisle. I tried to ignore the situation. My compassion was leaking away as I entered the real world with my ego and my sense of entitlement just blazingly out there. And then I drove home from the airport. I'm passing a car on the left, right? You know how this goes. There's a car on the right. And you're a little bit above the speed limit. And all of a sudden, some car from behind me goes zoom right up to the back of my car, and they're riding my tail. Now, I can't get over because it's like a little bit too busy up here, and I'm trying not to speed. And boy, am I making up all kinds of stories about the guy behind me. He's aggressive. He's inconsiderate. He thinks he owns the road. And just to drive him nuts, I think maybe I'll slow down. And then I imagine him speeding past me as I finally pull over. I think about the gestures that I could possibly make to express my attitude. And I even imagine a cop up ahead who's going to stop him and give him that ticket he deserves. Yep, Conference on Compassion certainly changed my life. Lessons are so hard sometimes. They really are. Well, I struggled along for a few weeks and paying attention, trying to lean in the direction of understanding and kindness in all kinds of situations. And some were easier than others. That's when the monthly Soul Matters packet came out with the worship theme of imagination. Now, if you're not a Soul Matters group member, Reverend Scott sends out a packet of resources that are chosen to perk our interest in the monthly theme. There's quotes and web links and movies and books. There was one resource in the packet that expanded my understanding of compassion like nothing else had. Maybe you read it. It was a short story called Rainy Day Wedding. It was a submission to MBR's program, 3-Minute Fiction, where writers respond to a topic and write a story that only takes 3 minutes to read. It's a heart-tugging story of a mother whose son is gravely ill. His future is uncertain, and his illness begins to prevent him from living his life. When he misses his first day of kindergarten, his mother begins to imagine his life. And each day, she tells him in brilliant detail all the significant events, and together they live them in story. His soccer game when he made the winning goal, his first crush, his senior prom, his graduation from college, and on this day, she is telling him the story of his wedding. He is 5. And each day she faces her own suffering and fear, and yet walks into that room and sees him as whole and vibrant, and together they imagine a life. That's when I understood that the missing piece of compassion may just be imagination. It's the ability to see beyond one's own sorrow and create possibilities that are not rooted in brokenness, but in relationship and love. Now, there's no way to know that the imagined life this mother and her son had was less meaningful or rich than the one they might have lived together. Who is to say that what's created by compassion and imagination didn't truly heal both of them during an impossible situation? And while this was a story and not reality, I began to see examples of life situations being healed by compassion and imagination all around me. They were gentle, quiet examples of relationship and love. There was Jim and Mary Lou. They were longtime members of our congregation in Rochester. They both passed away this past year. Jim was 94 and Mary Lou was in her 80s. They lived in a senior community, and I used to visit them often. And most of Mary Lou's life, she was a gardener. And before Alzheimer's took away pieces of her ability to garden, she started to put houseplants around her house to bring her garden inside. There was a grow light over a table, and it was filled with African violets. And in the front window, there were geraniums and anything that would bloom. And every time that I would come over, even as her diminishing state became more evident, she would talk to me about her flowers and her gardens. And I started to notice that the garden was being really filled with silk flowers and plastic plants. And when I asked Jim about it, he said to me, as she became less able to care for the plants or even tell me how to do it, I started to replace them with fake ones. She never noticed. I just wanted her to have her garden and her sense of herself as a gardener for as long as she could. Imagine a life. So then I began to consider how this compassion and imagination might work on a grander scale. I mean, could it really indeed change the world? Could we think of different solutions to some of the world's most challenging struggles? I have this friend who's a doctor, an MD, and also an acupuncturist. And a few years ago, he told me about a drug treatment center in Rimini, Italy. It's called San Patrignano. And now he volunteers there every year, providing acupuncture to those struggling with addiction. Now, at first, I thought maybe this was one of those boondoggles, because we certainly have drug treatment programs here in the United States. But this way, he could go to Italy right off a business trip. But then he described the difference to me. He said, Tina, the first thing you notice is that it's amazingly beautiful. The setting is filled with flowers and plants. It's peaceful and renewing. And the participants are treated with love and respect overall. You see, each one is given a job to match their ability, and they're also given a mentor. And when the physical ravages of addiction diminish their ability to work, they're not isolated or medicated. They're helped by their mentor and volunteers to complete their work. Now, it may take all day. and it may involve times of rest and being held. And the job may only be to sweep 4 feet of a walkway. But through the compassion of others, they are given love and purpose and meaning, and they heal and find release from their afflictions. So here's what the website says about San Patrignano. It's a community for life that welcomes those suffering from drug addiction and marginalization. It helps them to once again find their way, thanks to a rehabilitation program that is above all a program based on love. It is free because love is a gift. And in case you think it's an exclusive club, currently there are 1,300 residents. It serves as a prison deterrent program certified by the Italian government. Whole families are welcome so they don't suffer from separation, and its success rate is 72%. The rate of residential drug treatment programs in the U.S. averages 25%. San Patrignano takes no government funding. It's 60% self-sufficient through the sale of products that the residents make. Fabric, furniture, wine, dairy products, graphic design, and web hosting. It's all done by the community residents. The rest of their funding comes from donations. It costs 25 million euros to run each year, and they always make their goals. Compare this to drug treatment in the United States, where it is restricted and directed by insurance company, where addicts are often shamed and demoralized and frequently imprisoned. It's a sharp contrast. And before we say it's not possible here, please acknowledge the evidence and the potential of compassion and imagination. San Patrignano honors the wholeness of the individual, offers them a way to take responsibility for their life. In the language of compassion, they are seen as whole and worthy. They are connected to us and offered love and meaning. Imagine a life. Okay, so then I kept looking, because it can't be the only place in the world who's able to do this. And then I found a small city in Belgium. I love this one. In Giel, Belgium, that's G-H-E-E-L, a small city of 33,000 individuals, people with mental illness and developmental disabilities are fully integrated into homes, families, workplace, and the community. 50 years ago, fearing those with difficulties would be dangerously excluded from society, a foster care system was developed. Currently, 650 people are placed with families throughout the community, and 250 of them work in shops and farms and factories, not in sheltered workshops like here in the U.S., but they work and get paid for the fullest degree of their ability. The program is supported by a hospital where doctors and community workers oversee the progress of the people in foster care, and each individual is supported by the families who take them in. After 6 months, the participants improve. Their medication is typically reduced. They feel better. They see themselves as members of the family. They're given responsibility and purpose. Some individuals have been parts of families for over 30 years. And these are people with bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, some of the most challenging and difficult mental disabilities that we have. The residents of the town report that individuals in their care are part of an extended family where the children are enriched by their presence, not a burden. The people in the community know them, see them. They're not dangerous or troublesome, but they're part of society. One resident of Giel puts it this way: we know them, we like them, we feel in our hearts that they are our brothers and sisters. This is normal for us. Imagine a life. There's no homelessness in Giel. To see someone asleep on the street would be of grave concern to the residents. In a community defined by passion, compassion, and imagination, the individuals are seen as whole and worthy and connected. Their system of care speaks to this belief and to the power of an open heart and an open mind to heal the challenges of the world. I look at these examples and I begin to understand the possibilities that evolve from lived compassion and imagination. But where do we start in a world that is so desperately in need of repair? See, this is where I believe we need to start, with what's right in front of us. We start with ourselves. We commit to checking in on that awareness and our own judgment. It's a hard task, I know. But these judgments, they kind of sneak up on us, and often unexpectedly, especially on the highway. And then we work to cultivate a true sense of interconnected web of existence. We see ourselves as others, and we act with imagination and love. Maybe for me, it starts back on the plane next to the fussy baby. It starts with a gentle conversation and an open heart. I could have changed that situation. I could have made it more comfortable for the woman who was clearly struggling with a fussy kid. I could have been different. There's a key moral longing in Judaism called tikkun olam, to prepare the world. And notice I say moral longing, a desire to do it. This teaching recognizes that each of us is frail and flawed, and yet completely capable of repairing our world one piece at a time. And that piece starts with ourselves. Rachel Naomi Remen, she's an author, a physician, and a spiritual teacher, tells this Hebrew story of creation. It seems that in the beginning, the original light of creation was shattered into 1,000,000 billion pieces and lodged into every aspect of existence. The highest human calling is to look for the light, to point at it when we see it, and to gather it up. And with that light, we repair the world. Perhaps this is the essential message of our time, because this light shines in each of us, and no matter how hurt or imperfect or tired we may be, our capacity to change what is right in front of us is real and it is powerful. So let's find the light. Let's imagine a life changed by tenderness, kindness, love, and compassion. And together, we just might repair the world. May it be so, and amen.
Join us for worship every Sunday at 10 a.m. at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua, a welcoming congregation. We are located at 3024 Cooley Road, 4 miles west of South Main Street, Canandaigua, just north of the intersection with Routes 5 and 20. Look for the blue signs just before the turn. Your comments about this program or questions about the church are welcome at 585-396-1370 or at our website, www.canandaiguauu.org. Producer and editor, Daniel Brigham.